Okay. Good evening. We're up to Summit Bays. We're discussing that. Again, tangentially, we're going to go off a little bit. That said, Michal Bashol, she had 5 children from Adriel. They were from Merav's kids. So we said that Michal raised them, and since Michal raised them, they're considered hers. And now the Gemara is going to bring other situations where, as a result of a person doing something, they're given the credit as if they did it themselves. So we're up to Yud Tes Amid Beis, where before the lines get wide, about 5-6 lines up. In parentheses, Chananya Kar Yochanan Vishtay. So we have this Chananya Kar Yochanan Vishtay Elazar Geula Shmuel Bilimudei Siman. This is the Siman. So Reb Chanina Aimer, Reb Chanina says, Mehacha, v'tikveru hashchenos, and the shchenos, the neighbors, called Shem Lamar, Yulad ben Naomi, that a ben was born to Naomi. Now we know that Rus had a husband Machlain, and he had died, and now Boaz had gone ahead, had been Miyabim Rus, and now they had a child, and they called the child, right, as they called Naomi, as if she gave birth to the child. V'chi Naomi Yolda, v'lei Rus Yolda. Ella Yolda v'Naomi Gidla. Rus gave birth, and Naomi raised her. The Fikach Nikra al Shema, therefore the child is considered Naomi's. Be'emes, we spoke out, guys, from the I think Marami Pano, that by Yibum, the child that's born is the neshama. It's the malbim. It's the neshama of the dead person. We spoke at that malbim, that it's contained within the shoe. Like we spoke at we said the guf is the coating of the neshama. The shoe is the coating of the foot. So that's why, that's the Indian of Yibum with the chalitza. You don't want to do it, and therefore you're throwing away the shoe. But Yibum is you're going ahead and you're taking that neshama that had nowhere to go because it never was in a guf, because it was never born yet, because the husband died without children. And now you're going ahead and you're naming it after the child. So it's based upon this, she raised it. But in fact, more, it's considered what named after, it is mamish, her child. It's mamish machloin. Based on the concept of Gilgul Neshama, it's mamish machloin. So it's mamish, her child. It's very geschmack. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, mehacha. It says, v'ishtoi haYehudiya yolda es yered avigdor. And this is all merumas to Moshe Rabbeinu, fellas. This is all merumas to Moshe Rabbeinu. It says, Yoldes Yered Avigdor, Eila b'nei Bisya, Basparo, Asher Lokach Mered. By the way, everyone calls her Basya, or Batya. Her name is Bisya. It's not so, I guess, again, I have a granddaughter, Batya. If I call her Bisya, I'm sure my daughter-in-law would not be happy. But that happens to be the name, is Bisya. So, Mered Zekelev, V'lama Nikra Shmoy Mered, Shemored Ba'atzis Meraglim. This is Kolev. Why was he called Mered, to rebel? Because he rebelled against Elis and Raglim. So says the Marvachi, Bisya Yolda, did Bisya go ahead and have a child with Moshe? V'lo Yecheved Yolda, Yecheved gave birth to Moshe. Eli Yecheved Yolda, Bisya Gidla. Yecheved physically gave birth to her, but Bisya raised him. The Fikach Nikra Shema, therefore, it's again an example, it's called after her name. Here's the source. It says, Ga'alta Bizroya Amecha b'nei Yaakov v'Yosef Sela, the sons of Yaakov and Yosef. Now the Shvatim are not the sons of Yosef; they're the sons of Yaakov, right? It's the sons of Yaakov and Yosef. V'chi Yosef Yolad, v'halo Yaakov Yolad. Ella she Yaakov Yolad v'Yosef Kilkel. Yaakov went ahead, right, and he gave birth to them, he fathered them, and Yosef sustained them. The Fikach Nikra al Shmoy, therefore they called after what? After Yosef. Amr Shmuel ben Achmeni, Amr Rabbi Yonasan, Kol Malamed ben Chaver Torah. Anyone who teaches his ben Chaver Torah, anyone who teaches ben Chaver Torah, Malava Kosav Kilo Yaldo. It's considered a sifat as if you bore him. Shnemar the Eila told us Aaron and Moshe. Eila Shmois b'nei Aaron. It says they told us of Aaron and Moshe, and then it doesn't say Moshe's children. It says Aaron's children. So how can Aaron's children be Moshe's children? So what I have to say, Aaron Yolad Moshe Li made. Moshe taught them the Fikach Nikra al Shmoy, therefore they called after Moshe as if he bore them. L'chein koyamar Hashem al beis Yaakov asher poda es Avraham. V'chi heichem matzina b'Yaakov shepoda l'Avram. Where do you find that Yaakov is poda Avraham? Son of Yehuda shepoda mitzar gidul bonim. Yaakov was poda Avram Avinu from mitzar gidul bonim. V'hainu dechsiv le'ata yevesh Yaakov le'ata yevesh Yaakov me'aviv le'ata ponav yechevru me'avi aviv. So take a look, fellas. It's mitzar gidul bonim. I find this fascinating. If you look at Rashi, shepoda mitzar gidul bonim. Shehultu love Teireach Hashvatim, right? It was placed on Yaakov the Teireach to be matriach to go ahead and raise the Shvatim. Sheal Avram hayamutal oisay Teireach. It should have been on Avram. Dichsiv v'beisi esaracha, right? I'll increase your children. But who in Yaakov padeu? He went ahead and was paid to him from the tircha of raising him. That was the tzargid l'banim. Let's taste this. Shepodim tzargid l'banim. Pirush countries. What does Kuntris say? Pirsha Kuntris is Yud Bei Shvatim. That in other words, the Tzagidl was the Yud Bei Shvatim. In other words, raising children is Tzagidl Banim. Says Taisus Lein right? Chada the Einet Tsar El Simcha. Taisus is Shita, raising children, not a Tsar, it's a Simcha. Again, everything based upon perspective. You go ahead and you raise your children and view it as a simcha and not a tircha. It says you're nichlis into machlokas Rashi and Tosfos. Gabe Oved Edom. It says by Oved Edom that the Aaron was in his possession for 6 months. Shabarchu Hashem bebonim. Scharo Aaron shayi bebeisai. So you see, having a lot of children is a bracha, is a simcha. V'oid the Avram hayolei bonim Keturah. Avram had many children, not just Yitzchak and Ishmael. He had children from Keturah. What's the Tsar Gidul Banim? Tsar Shel Yosef v'Achiv. The Tsar of Yosef and his brothers, the Gilgul, Yeridus Mitzrayim, and going down to Mitzrayim. In other words, the travails of his life and what happened to his son Yosef. That was the Tsar Gidul Banim, not the raising of the children, but the interaction between Yosef and his brothers. Back in the Gemara. Ksiv. Okay, a little background. We're discussing the Shaul and the interaction with him and David. We spoke out the whole Indian of Shaul the other day, Ayin Sham on the recording. It's a very nice idea. Shaul had an advisor named Doeg HaAdomi. We're going to meet Doeg. It's the end of the Masechta in the last parak. He's one of the people who has no chelik in the next world. He was responsible for the destruction of Novi Kahanim physically. He was malshin on them, and he physically had to kill them. The Gemara is going to say that all his Torah was misafu lechutz. He never internalized his Torah. It was all just scholarly information to him. It didn't get krichterayim in the beina. Ken, you want to explain that? Yeah. It didn't go in the bones. It didn't go in the bones, you know? So he advised Shaul. Shaul, David's on the run from Shaul. Shaul held David as a Amari b'Malchus. After all, David was anointed in the lifetime of Shaul. I don't think there's a bigger Amari b'Malchus than that a king is a king in the lifetime of a king. And therefore he's chasing after him to kill him. And Doeg said he's considered dead already. He's considered dead. Since he's married to Machas, he's considered dead. So what did he do? Shaul went and took David's wife Michal and gave it to a person named Palti ben Layash. And we're going to see Palti's reaction, and it's unbelievable what Palti did. Okay, says the Gemara, Ksiv Palti. In one place it says that it says Palti, and another place it calls him Paltiel. We adds the name Kael to his name. Amr Rabbi Yochanan, Palti Shmo. His name was Palti. V'lama nikra Shmoi Paltiel. Why was it called Paltiel? Shepaltul Kel min Aveira. HaKadosh Baruch Hu caused him to go ahead and escape from an Aveira, meaning the Isur of Eishes Ish. The Isur of Eishes Ish. What did this person do? Noyat Cherev Beinoi Leveina. He took a sword and he placed it between him and Michal. V'omar Kol Oisik B'dav Zeh. Anyone who's going to be Oisik B'dav Zeh, meaning to go ahead and live with Michal, Yidka B'cherev Zeh, will go ahead and be daka with the cherev. He'll go ahead and get literally stabbed with the sword. Very famous piece from Chaim Shmulevitz on here is l'chayra. Again, he's living all these years with this woman, as we're going to see, and he sticks it in the ground. That's going to stop him from doing an Aveira. And the Reb Chaim says, it's not, that's not going to stop him from the Aveira. It's what he felt the moment, and he acted upon the moment. At that moment, when he went ahead and he was margish that this is an Eishes Ish, he went ahead, he stuck it in the ground, and every time he's going to see the sword, it's going to go ahead and invigorate him with that feeling. And because it's very important to Reb Chaim, when you have a Hagasha for something, you have to act upon it. If you don't act upon it, it dissipates, it goes by the wayside. You go to a good levaya, you go to a good wedding, you go to a good shir, and you're going to be different, you're going to learn. Unless you go ahead and sit down and learn, it doesn't make a difference. I mean, how many people start the Shas? I could say to this Olam. How many people went to the Siyam Shas? They had this Iris, Bracha Staff 1, right? How many people do we have? Yankel, Bracha Staff 1, right? The place was packed. And what did I tell you, Yankel? I said, just wait and see. And there you remain. You remain with a few. Because why? They felt the moment, but they didn't go ahead and they acted upon it, but not with the same vigor. That's the word of Chaim over here. But Haksiv, it says, Vayelech ita isha. It's mashma that what that was. It was his wife. It says when David requested that his wife be returned to him, and it says that isha. What is that isha? Shenasalok isha, right? Right. That he was mechavev, and therefore what he was like a she was like a he was like. It's mashma that what that vayelecha to isha. It's mashma that there was bia when it calls her man. It says Gemara elashenasala ki isha, but through chavivis, but not that she was, not that he was. Boilah, v'ksiv halachu bacha. He was crying. Mashma, he's gonna miss her very much. After all, so why is he crying if they never lived together? It says Gemara ala mitzvah. He's crying. This tzaddik is crying on the fact that now he won't be able to go ahead and be pirish from doing this mitzvah of staying away from another man's wife. The yazal minei. The mitzvah that's leaving him. It says, and he was crying ad bachurim, shenasu shteim kebachurim, that Michal and Palti were like bachurim, shleitoy tambiyah, that they never lived together as man and wife. And now the Gemara describes the greatness of Palti. Amar of Yosef, Takfa shel Yosef, the koicha wat of Yosef, the Meister Gadol of Yosef, and the Senusa shel Bayaz was nothing compared to Boaz. In other words, Yosef staying away from Eshes Potiphar was nothing, was like a nivus to Boaz. What Boaz did by staying away from Rus, just to be reminded, Rus goes in the middle of the night, she lies down next to him, and she says, I'll cover your feet. She's Maram is that he has to be the boil, right? He has to be the goyal, excuse me. He has to be the goyal. Right. It's Freudian. He has to be the goyal, and he didn't do anything. So as we're going to see, the Taikva Shel Boyaz and the greatness of Boyaz, the Tekifas that he stayed away from Rus, is Anvenusa Shel Palti Ben Layish, is like nothing to Palti Ben Layish. So we're going in degrees. Yosef, whatever Yosef was nothing compared to what Boaz did, and what Boaz did is nothing compared to what Palti did. It's nothing compared to what Palti did. Taikva Shel Yosef, Anvenusa Shel Boyaz, D'chsev, Vayi B'chatzi Alayla. It says Boaz wakes up in the middle of the night. He wakes up in the middle of the night. Vayecher ish, and he shudders. Vayilafes. What my vayilafes is Amarav shenasu b'sorei karoshay lefasais. He had a taiva. His ava was strong like a lefes, like a some type of strong vegetable. In other words, and nonetheless he refrained. Nonetheless he refrained from doing an avera. Look at the bottom Rashi. Karoshay lefasais nishkasha v'afa pikein kavish yitzroi. He went ahead and was kavish yitza. Even though she wasn't an Eishes Ish, she was an unmarried woman. So what was the greatness of Boaz? Was two steps. One, she was kind of more mutter to him because she was a penuya, and Sveitin, she was already in bed with him. Mashenka Yosef, who was an Eishes Ish, and not in bed with him. So therefore, the greatness of Yosef, not to chas v'shalom minimize it in any way, but compared to Boaz, Boaz was strongest. And Boaz stronger was compared to Taikva Shel Boaz is Avenusa Shel Palti Ben Layish, like Palti Ben Layish, Kid Amoran, like we said before. All these years they were together. He stuck a sword between. Rabbi Yochanan, my dichsev, rabbis, Maras Banus Asachayel, Ve'at Alis Al Kulana, Rabbis Banus Asachayel Ze Yosef, Ubayaz. Be'at olas al kolonas al palti ben laya. She's greater than them. Amr Shmuel bar Nachmeni, Amr Yonason, my dechsiv, Sheker Achein vehevel hayofi, Sheker Achein ze Yosef vehevel hayofi ze Bayaz, Yeres Hashem mitzalo ze palti ben Layosh. Davar Acher, Sheker Achein ze Dorish al Moshe, vehevel hayofi ze Dorish al Yeshua, Yeres Hashem mitzalo ze Dorish al Chizkiyahu. We're speaking about the greatness of Torah going through the generations. That's the Rashi. Dorish al Moshe v'Yeshua, Asku b'Torah harbe. The Dorish of Chizkiyahu yoisamihem, and the Dar of Chizkiyahu was even greater than them. Kidachsiv, it says v'chayval oil mifnei shamein. V'amina, what does that mean? In the next, we're going to see in the chelik. Chayval oil shel sancheriv, mifnei shamanu shel shamnei shel Chizkiyahu. That the oil of sancheriv gets broken because of that. The shemen of Chizkiyahu. What was the shemen? Shayidoilik bebati midrashiyos. The whole night they were burning the oil, learning Torah. They found Midar Sheva that even I think the Lashon is even the kiddies knew Tyrus. It was an amazing thing. So we're describing here that the greatness of Torah as permeated out through Chizkiyahu. Sheker Achein, Dabra Acher, Sheker Achein Zedar Shel Moshe, v'Yeshua, v'Hevel Yofi Zedar Shel Chizkiyahu, Yershem Hitzalel, Zedar Shel Rabbi Yehuda Bar Eloi. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Bar Eloi, Shayashisha Talmidim Mischasim Betalis Achas, V'Oiskim B'Torah. The Anias of Yehuda Bar Eloi, they were so cold that what? They were so cold that they had to cover 6 people had to be covered with one blanket, right? 6 people had to be covered with one blanket. Comes to mind a famous story with Howard Schultz and Reb Nosson Tzvi. Those people don't know the story. I'll make it quick. Some very wealthy people went to go ahead and see Reb Nosson Tzvi, and they didn't know who he was. Among those people was Howard Schultz, who is the creator of a place called Starbucks, right? And they wanted to meet the head of the largest yeshiva in the world. And they weren't expecting it because when he walked in, they saw that Rabbi Nosson Tzvi suffered terribly from Parkinson's, you know. And he walked in, and you imagine if you enter around the person with Parkinson's shaking or person has palsy, you get very nervous. So he goes, here they were, he said, one after the other, richer than the next. Then this person, he says, what's the lesson of the Holocaust? So one guy says, never again, and he throws him down. One after the other, they're getting sushmeted. And Howard Schultz feels like he's back, who knows where, and he's just pachet chodim. What's going to happen? He's going to call him to say something. And he said to him, the message of the Holocaust is, they got off the train, they were freezing, they had nothing, they're wearing nothing, very little. They got in Poland in the winter. Can you imagine? They get to the barracks, and they're given one blanket for 6 people. The message of the Holocaust is, take that blanket and share with others. Go back to America, take that blanket and share with others. It's the Mefurish Gemara, guys. It's this Gemara. This person, Howard Schultz, Howard ended up being great friends with Reb Nosson Tzvi, like unbelievable friends. Like he really was. He was mashpia on him very, very strongly. Okay, says the Mishnah. Continuing along, discussing what? Discussing the king. Discussing the king. Mace lay mace. So we said by the Kohen Gadol, we had a machloikas whether he's able to leave the Beis HaMikdash or not. Right? Rabbi Yehuda said he can't, and Rabbi Meir said he could leave. He couldn't leave Mikdash from his state of kedusha, but he can go from alleyway and follow along that way. However, the king, mace lay mace, in the Yitzmi Pesach Palter, and the king doesn't leave what the Palter, the palace he doesn't leave. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, says Acha Mita. If he wants to go after the meat, I find this interesting. There's no pasuk that says he can't. By the Kohen Gadol, it says, "Well, Mikdash Layetze Shali Dveis Hamikdash." Rabbi Yehuda says he can't leave. Over here, Rabbi Yehuda says no. If he wants to go, he could go, and he got a pasuk for it. In Retzelet says, "Achamita Yaitze Shekem Atzina B'David Sheyaitze Achamitasa Shel Avner." We find that David went after the mita of Avner. Shnemar by Melech David Hoylech Achamita. So they said, "Amlei Lahaya Dava." That David followed the mace of Avner is no raya. He only did it to go ahead and appease the people. So when the king goes ahead and they bring the Sudas Havra to eat, then everyone sits on the ground for who mace of a dargish, and the king sits on something called a dargish. Okay, before we begin the Gemara, It's story time. First Melech Kal Yisrael is Shaul from Shevet Binyamin. We all know that Shaul, again, it failed. He was a great person. He just wasn't a good king. He fails to kill Amalek. He fails to wait for David to come, for Shmuel to come to fight the Pelishtim, and he loses the Malchus. He loses the Malchus. It's given to David, but David doesn't ascend the Malchus right away. Shaul is still alive. You can't have two kings at the same time. So you have David as the king, as the appointed king, and you have Shaul is I guess the lame duck, but he still had every single halacha of a melech. Shaul is killed in battle. He goes to the Pelishtim. He's killed in battle. Him along with his sons, including his great son Yehonasan, who is best friends with David. And you would think David would have sent to the melech there, and that's not what happened. What happened was there was a period of time that it's Machlokes Rashi and Tosfos exactly. For 7.5 years, there wasn't a king of Klal Yisrael. For 7.5 years, there wasn't a king of Klal Yisrael. 2.5 years, Shaul's son Ishbosheth was king. For 2.5 years, Ishbosheth was king. Right. Ishbosheth's power was Avner ben Ner. Avner ben Ner was an unbelievably great tzaddik. The Gemara says, how could he die? If the Gemara is going to find that he was assassinated, what did he do wrong that he was assassinated? He was just a great person. He was a sheker. What does it say about it? Loy lekalim hamerutz. It's not to the kalim, the fast the race. Loy legiba hamilchama. That Asol was a very fast runner, and what happened was there was a little swordmanship between Binyamin and Yehuda, and Yehuda won. Binyamin's running away. Avner is Binyamin is running away. Asael, who was the brother of Yoav, is running after him. And Avner says, "Go back." So he goes, "I'm not going back." He goes, "Go back. I don't want to kill you. I don't want to have to kill you." Akitz didn't listen, and Avner killed Asael. Yoav, Melech Tzruya, Yoav, who was the son of Tzruya, who was David's sister, by the way, so he was David's nephew, hated Avner, and as a result, he's going to take revenge against Avner. Avner goes ahead, and he is accused by Ishbosheth of doing an Aveira, of wanting, I think, of being with Shaul's Pelegesh. And Avner sees this Ishbosheth as a weak leader, and with the accusation, he realizes that he's not the one to be following. He's not the leader. He decides to go ahead and make peace. He wants to go ahead and make David the leader. He goes to David and basically, gets together. He's going to tell David that he's going to bring the throne to him. Yoav hears that he's there. He chases after him. He tricks Avner and he assassinates Avner. All the people now feel that David was guilty of what? Can you imagine? Avner's coming to make a peace treaty, and now he's assassinated. So therefore, David felt it only proper to go after the mita of Avner to prove that what he had nothing to do with his death. So therefore, that he followed him is a unique situation. It's not a heter carte blanche that every king can go after a mita. That particular case, there was a need. So that's what the Gemara said. That's what the Mishnah says, that David did it to him, fayis ta'am, that the people should realize. So that's the background over here, and it's going to come into play as we tell the story. Says the Gemara, Tan Rabbanan, Makom shenogu nashim latseis achran mita, the place where it's like for women to go after the mace, yaitza lifnei amita. If it's the way to go before the mace, yaitza. Whatever the minig is, women can do that. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer la'olam nashim lifnei amita. La'olam nashim have to go in front of the mita. Yaitzais. Shekhem etzina b'David sheyatzach mita shel We find that David went after the mita of Avner. Shenemar v'amelech David haylech achar mita. Right. So Amalei told him, okay. So in other words, Yehuda wants to bring a raya that woman had to go in front, because if David was in the back, how could David be walking with the women? So it must be the woman were in front and Amadi was in the back. They say, 1 second, the reason why David did it, he wanted to fire the people. So what happened? He went among the men, V'yotze ben anashim and niflas ben anashim. In other words, David went to all the people, including the women. So therefore, you have no raya that a woman has to be in front, because David Taka went among all of them in order to memphis them that they should be find them guilty of the assassination of Avner ben Ner. Okay. Shnemar v'yedu kol ha'am, when they saw the way that David was walking after the Mita, and Mekonen, he was kina, he was lamenting the death of Avner. V'yedu kol ha'am b'chol Yisrael ki lo yosla me'amelech lahamesis Avner. He didn't have anything much to do with the death of Avner. Davish Rava, my dechsiv, the pasuk says, "Vayavoy kol ha'am lahavros es David." The whole nation came lahavros es David. Is lahavros is usually the lashon of what, of to feed, but however ksiv lahachros v'karin and lahavros, it's written to kill him, lahachros, to cut him off, v'karin on lahavros. And then we go ahead and change it to lehavros. And lehavros means to feed him. Initially, they came to go ahead and lahachros, to cut him off, because they thought he was guilty of killing Avner. Well, it was safe lehavros, then lehavros. And the side, I don't want to get into it now. Mesaris Hashas writes on the side, there is no ksiv of Kri over here. It only says lahavros. It only says lahavros. But again, anyway. I'm Rabbi Yehuda Marav. If they man nenash Avner. Why was Avner punished? How can Avner be killed? Again, they're asking this question because of this great person. How is it possible that Avner ben Ner was killed? He should have been Meicha Shol Micha. When Shol was killing out Novir Kahanim, he should have been Meicha. It says Micha. Micha, Hitaka was Meicha. Hitaka, he complained. Not Nenash. He wasn't answered. So in other words, one pshat said that he was killed because why? Because he didn't stop when Shaul went ahead and told Doeg to kill Nov, he didn't do anything. Another one says no, he did, but he wasn't answered. Okay, we're both pshatim. It says, Vayekoinen HaMelech, and David was Mekoinen, he was lamenting Al Avner. Vayomer, and you know what he said? Vayomar, Hakamais Novel Yomus Avner. Should Avner die like Novel? Like a Novel, he should die? The great Avner? Yodecha lo yasurois, your hands, they were not tied. V'raglecha lo nechushtaim hugashu, and your feet weren't in chains. Can Paul if they b'nei avla nefalta? Should you fall like what? Like a b'nei avla? That's vayikoinim. So now let's start from the pasuk. Manda amalei micha, the one who says that what he did not open his mouth to stop it. Hachikama. Here's the way you read the pasuk. Yotcha lo yasurois v'raglecha lo nechushtayim hugashu. You aren't tied up. Nothing was stopping you. My time alei machas. Therefore, can Paul if b'nei avla nefalta. The reason why you're nafal is because why? Since your hands weren't tied, literally, you should have opened your mouth and you didn't. You read it this way. And that Micha v'leinena, that he was Meich and wasn't answered, here's the way to read it. It's mui metama. You read the pasuk with the lesson of Tema. Hakemois novel, yamas. Right? Should you die like novel? You're definitely asuras, right? You weren't tied up, you acted. Michte, mechuyi machis. My timer can pull if they avla nefalta. If you reacted, so why taka did you fall? So they both dash in the pasuk, but it's amazing how with a little expression changes the whole thing. Leman de Amar Micha, my time onish. Therefore, Leman de Amar Bishlam Leman de Amar that he wasn't Meicha, that's why he got killed. Like Leman de Amar that he was Meicha, that he did go ahead and voice, and he protested. What's the reason that why he died? Rav Nachman Yitzchak Sheshah Malchus Beis David Shteishanu and Mechza. For 2.5 years, he stopped Malchus Beis David. It could have been 2.5 years earlier, but he gave it to Ish Boisheth. This is a great kasha, guys. Let's see this. The second place was down. Sheshah Malchus Afa Gav de Darshinon. Even though we darshan Umalachim Mimcha Yetzeyu, that Kadosh Baruch Hu tells Yaakov, Malachim, plural, from you will come out. So who's the first melech? Shol. Who's the second melech? Ishbaishes. Frektoises Akasha. How could you accuse Shol of doing something wrong when HaKadosh Baruch Hu prophesied? He told Yaakov Avinu, kings will come from you. Meaning, and no one else was born yet except Binyamin. Everyone was born except Binyamin. So obviously what? You needed two more to come from him. Zeh Shol v'Ishbaishes. And for Taisus Mikol Makom, Hayachol is Skayim b'Makom Acher. A big aside, it could be Mekoyim in another place. It's very fascinating. I don't know if this gets into the philosophical reason, if you hear a nevuah, if there's a mitzvah for you to mekayim it. I'm just throwing this out, fellas. One of the most famous kashas in all of Jewish literature is why were the Mitzrayim punished if it was foretold in Bris Bein HaBesarim that they were going to go ahead and Kiyado Teida Kigeyi Zeracha Beretz Lo Lehem VeOvdu VeIno Esam. So why were they punished? It was so says the Ramban. It didn't have to be them. It could have been somebody else. Says the Ramban, if they were doing it to Mekayim the Devar Hashem, they should be rewarded. It seems just on a Regel Achas, perhaps Tosfos is saying that what? Like the Rambam, it didn't have to be. Good. It said Malachim Yitzeo, but you, if it's the wrong thing, you don't have to do it. To oppress Jews, to oppress any people is the wrong thing. So therefore the Mitzrayim were punished. So to go ahead, and after David, you knew David was the king, he was anointed king already, and you delayed it, right? Where do you have a right to do it? It says, so let Hashem take care of that. Let Hashem take care of that. That perhaps is the Hezbollah over here. Okay, anyway. Ukeshemarvin I say, he would sit on a dargish. He would sit on a dargish and people would sit around. And now the Gemara gets into exactly what is a dargish. My dargish, Ama Ula says Ula, Arsa de Gada. Look at this Rashi, guys. Arsa de Gada, says Rashi, Noigin Hoyu, La'aroich Mita V'Shulchan B'Bayis. There's a minig to go ahead, and you should go ahead and set up a bed in the house. You didn't use the bed at all. And Gada means mazel. So in other words, there was a bed in the house that was put there, and the purpose of it was a mazel bed. It was put there for mazel. So I was wondering, what's the story? What a special bed in the house for this is definitely bloggable material. Why do you have a bed in the house for mazel? Like, what's going on over there? So the Margolius Yom brings down something very interesting. It's a Gemara of Kuf Yud Aleph and Pesachim, Kuf Yud Aleph Amid Beis. It says, Isra de Mizaynei Nugget Shmei. The mazel, the malach, or the shade, or the is of food, a parnasa is called nugget. Isra Daniyusa, the Isra of poverty is Novel Shmei. His name is Novel. Novel means filth, right? This Anias lives among filth. For your mazel in your house to have panasa, the nekios, the fact that you have a bed in your house that is well made and well groomed, that goes ahead and fights this Isra Daniyusa, this energy of or malach or shade, whatever it is, of Anias. It's called Novel. It's called filth. The melid can't go ahead and exist with this bed. So that's the mazel. The mazel of the bed is for panasa. The mazel bed is for panasa, and it keeps out the novel of Anias as a result. Very nice. Says the Gemara Vaita. So this darga that the king sat on is this good luck bed. No one ever sat on that bed, right? The bed was what? For mazel. Now, someone's sitting on the bed? Like, why would someone be sitting on the bed now? Maskel Rava, my kusha, Dilman midi the havi achila v'shtia. Dada idna lo yachilna lo ashkeninu. Hashta kamuchlo lei v'kamashkina lei. The king, we didn't feed the king, and now we're feeding the king. So just like that's different, and where he sits is different. Eli kasha hakasha. Here's the kasha. Dargish ain't it tzarich l'kfaisai. El is like fai. A dargish, it used to be, we don't do this, but in Avelis, they used to turn the beds over. In Avelis, they used to turn the beds over. We don't do that. But if it's a dargish, you didn't have to turn it over, you just stand it up. A dargish, You would just ain't it tzarich l'kvaisai el is like fight. V'yisak daydach azu the gada. Am I in it tzarich l'kvaisai? Why can't you turn it over? Vatanya hakoifas mitasai le mitasa b'vadu kaifa el kol mita sheyesh le b'toich beiso kaifa. Right? Why don't you turn this over also? Why it says zoikif? If it's a mita, in other words, Bishleim, you tell me it's not a bed, I can understand why you stand it up. But you're telling me it's a bed, so you should turn it over like any other bed in the house. Says Gemara, my kusha, maybe it's like a mita that's miyuch for kalim, diktani, and hoisim yuchedes the kalim. If the mita is miyuch for kalim, and it's tzarich l'kvaisa, you don't have to turn it over. Eli kasha, you want a kasha or kasha? Dargish mater kabitin, vu neifel me'elav. A dargish, you go ahead and you take when you have what? When you're in avelis, what do? You just loosen the knots. It's in loops and it falls. Picture like a trampoline that has on the corners. It has like the bite. If you take off those corner springs, it's going to fall down. So this dargish had it loops. If you go ahead, you wouldn't have to stand it up. You just go ahead and loosen it. And therefore, in hoisem yuchedes l'kelim, no. Dargish mate karbitim vu neifel me'elav. Visakadaitach arsa de gada karbitim miyaslei. It doesn't have karbitim. It doesn't have these loops. Ella ki asaravin amarav amali hahum rabbanon v'rav tachlif shmei du shchichi b'shuka de godoy. He was commonly found in the streets of the leather makers. And of Amalei, my dargish is arsa de tzala. It's a leather, some type of leather cot. Amrav Yirmiyah, Amrav Yochanan, dargish on its base. Dargish is sirugoi misaychai. Dargish, the sirugoi is in the wood, and mita sirugoi me al gaba. So figure like this. Look at my fingers. My fingers is a piece of wood. So you'd have in a dargish on sides it would go in the wood itself. But a mita would go over the wood, right? It would overlap. You wouldn't go in the wood. There wouldn't be holes in the wood. You would just overlap. That's the difference between the two. Meisive kli eitz me'emasai mekabel tuma. We know that when there's a gemar malacha, it's mekabel tuma when there's gemar malacha. So we want to know a kli eitz at which point in time is the gemar malacha? Is hamita varisa, whether it's a mita, a bed, varisa is a crib, mishayishufam be'or hadog, when they're polished with the skin of a fish. If you're telling me that a mita is me'al gaba, why would you have to go ahead and polish it? It's going to be covered up. Especially if you're telling me it's in the side, so you want it to look good, it's going to be polished on top using the skin of a fish. But if you're telling me it's covered anyway by ropes, why would you go ahead and do it? The fact that you're doing it is mashma that what? It's in the bed itself. It's not on top of the bed. Both the mita and a dargish are mitaychai, meaning they're not on top of the bed. They're there's holes in the bed. What's the difference? So mita aule va'afuke bibizyone. In mita, you have the skin, you have the leather. The leather would have straps. The straps themselves would go into the wood. Dargish aule va'afuke be'avaksa. That they would go ahead. There'd be loops coming out of what? Of the bed, and the straps of the leather would go into the loops. So by mita, it's directly into the wood, and by a dargish, you have loops in the wood, and the straps go in the loops. That's the difference. Amar Rabbi Yaakov ben Yeshua ben Levi, halach Reb Shimon Gamliel, halach Reb Shimon Gamliel. Amar Rabbi Yaakov bar Ami, mita sheneklita yotzes, right? Mita that, let's say you have a posted bed and it's part of the bed, you can't turn it over. Zoikfa v'dayayi. Go ahead and stand it up, and that's enough. So we had the back to our program a little bit. We digressed to discuss beds, right? Sleep. What was that? Sleepies? Not sleepies. Something. They went out of business. Anyway, we have going back to the parsha of the king. A king goes out. He goes to Bezdin. So if they go to war, right? Now, that was the first Mishnah. The first Mishnah said, you need a Bezdin of the Sanhedrin of 71. So the king, before he goes to war, has to go to Bezdin 71. He can go ahead and go through your property. He can go through your property and make a derech against your will. Rambam seems to say that's only b'shas milchama. In other words, it's a milchama and he needs your property and go through. Others say that no, if he needs the road, let's say he wants to get to his property, a shortcut, he can make a shortcut through your property. And you can't go ahead and protest. Derech HaMelech, Ein Lo Shir, as opposed to the different shiurim, how big in Baba Basra we spoke about how big a derech could be. His there's no shir. The Cholam boys is in, and when they brought back the spoils of war, Noislan Loi, they'd give it to him. V'Unoitel Chelik Barosh, and he would take his Chelik Barosh. We're going to see how much he exactly took. Frag the Gemara Kasha. Why are you telling me in this Mishnah by a king takes 71? It's the first Mishnah. The first Mishnah in the Masechta. It said that what? We were going through the 71. We said one of the things is that what? Milchemes Rishus. You have to go need a best in the Sanhedrin Gedoyel of 71. Tanina Chadizimna. Eimait Sinam Milchemes Rishus. LP best and shall shivim miyachad. And for the Gemara, I did Tani Kol Mili de Melech Tananami Mait Sinam Milchemes Rishus. Once we went ahead and brought in all the things to do with the Melech, we brought this in as well. But there's no Chiddush whatsoever. Amrav Yudam Shmuel. Anything that says in the Parsha is the Melech is Mutaboy. Rav Oma, Leinemar Parshazu, Eloliyim Aleim. Okay, Shenemar, Soim Tassim Alach Melech. Now, there's two parshas in the Torah. One in Shoftim and one in Shmuel. Shoftim is the following. After you settle in the land, and you will say, Asimu alai melech, a place for me, a king, like all the nations, asher svivosai. Slain tasim alecha melech, place upon a melech, asher yivcha Hashem alekecha, boy, mikerav achecha, can't be a ger, it has to be mikerav achecha, tasim alecha melech, l'sucha lasis alecha ishnachri, you can't put anyone in ishnachri, asholo yachicha, he has to be your brother. Rak lo yarbal susim, there's halachas, as we'll see. Okay, so that's the parsha in the Torah of Kings. Now over here, when it says the parsha melech, it doesn't mean that. Here's what it means. And this is very, 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 in Shmuel Aleph Perches. Okay. Shmuel's old, his sons do not go in his way, right? And the people come and they tell Shmuel the following. The people, they come and they tell Shmuel the following. Vayeskapsu kol ziknei Yisrael v'yirol Shmuel Ramasa. Vayomer love. Hine yatos akanta, you're old. Ubanecha leholcha v'drachecha, your sons don't go in your ways. Ata simu lanu melech l'shavteinu k'chol hagoyim. Simu lanu, place lanu for us, the melech, to judge us like all the goyim. Vayera David be'eni Shmuel kasher amru t'nali melech l'shavteinu was very bad in the eyes of Shmuel. Vayispal Shmuel Hashem and Shmuel davens to Hashem. So the fact that they requested the king, Shmuel finds very offensive. Vayom Hashem al Shmuel, Shema b'kol ha'am, listen to them. L'chol asher yomru elecha, to everything they ask you. Ki lo yoscham, so they're not rejecting you, Shmuel. Ki yosim, so they're rejecting me, mimlach aleim, from going ahead and ruling over them. K'chol ha'maisim asher osam b'yom alosim Mitzrayim, it's nothing new. Since they left Mitzrayim, all they give me is tzaris. V'yata Shema b'kol ha'am, listen to them and give them a king, but tell them what a king can do. Listen to this. They can take your sons and put them in the army. And they can run in front of his chariot. They'll be farmers and they'll be armament makers. And your daughters they'll go ahead, be perfumers, and they'll be bakers and such. They could take the best of your crumim, the best of your fields, the best of your vineyards. Your olive groves. So on and so forth. So Nehemiah said it could take. No, the king can do all of this. The question is this really the halacha they can do this, or it was just Shmuel scaring them? That's the discussion of the Gemara, guys. So this, when it says the Parsha Melech, do not think it means Shoftim Yud Zayin. It means Shmuel Aleph Ches. So now, first wide line. Amrav Yudam Shmuel Kol Oimer Parshas Melech Muta. Ravama loy nemer pashazu elu alayim aleim to scare them. Shnemar same tasam alecha melech shetei emaser alecha kitanoi. This machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Shmuel, Rav and Yehuda and Shmuel is machlokes tanoim. Rabbi Yossi Omer koloi me pashas melech, anything that says in Shmuel Aleph melech mutaboy. Rabbi Yehuda Omer loy nemer pashazu elu kedei la'ayim aleihem. Shnemar same tasam alecha melech shetei emaser alecha, his aim should be upon you. You should be scared of him, but not that he can do this. The Chenoya Rabbi Yehuda Omer Gimel mitzvahs nitzavi Yisrael b'chnisas and la'aretz, 3 mitzvahs lahamid lahem melech, establish a king, lahach v'sarish alamalek, destroy Amalek, v'libnois lem beis habachiran, build a beis hamikdash. Rabbi Neroy Omer leinemru pashazu el keneged tarum ma'isam. This whole pasha was stated keneged tarum ma'isam. In other words, there was no pasha of melech at all. It was stated keneged their complaints. They complained to the king, and they Shnemar v'amarta asimu lai melech, and they will say they'll ask for a king. You look in the parsha Shoftim. The question is it a mitzvah or not? In other words, the formidita guys, listen to this parsha. Tell me the way it flows. When you come into the land, v'yashavta v'amarta, and they will say to you, asimu lai melech, then give them a melech. If it's a mitzvah, why doesn't it say, give them a king? You can't wear shatnez. You have to wear tzitzis. You have to eat karfshis. We know there's mitzvahs. But the way this is stated, it's mashma. If they ask, give it to him. If they don't. And that seems to be substantiated by the fact Shmuel's upset, Hashem's upset. If it's a mitzvah, why are they upset? This is one of the most famous kashas, guys, in all of Jewish literature. Why in the world were they upset? Why was Shmuel upset? Why was Hashem upset? After all, it's a mitzvah. Now, if you tell me it's not a mitzvah, then it makes sense. But the Rambam quotes this as a mitzvah. So let's do the Gemara, and then I'm going to go through a few Marmakaimis with you that I sent out, which you don't have to send out. You can have it on the screen in a second. Anyway, so therefore, Tanya, Rav Lezer Omer, Sekenu shebedar kahogen shalu. The Sekenu of those generations, they asked correctly. Shnemar, Tananu melech l'shavtenu. Aval amil aretz amaratzim shebehem kilkalu. They messed it up. Shnemar, v'hayinu gam anachnu kechol goyim, will be like all the nations. V'shavtenu malkenu v'yotz lefanenu. They only wanted a king to go out to war for purposes. The Sekenu, they said, given to us for the right reasons, right? To judge us. They wanted a king l'chol goyim. Tanya, Rabbi Yomi, shalosh mitzvahs establish Yisrael b'chazos laretz. Lahamel melech u'lahachar zarish shalamalek. You see clearly it's a mitzvah. I don't know which one comes first. When it says that what Hashem's hand is thrown and his name is not complete, his case is not a kisei, his name Yudke Vavke is not complete. When it says, the Kodesh Baruch Hu says, my kisei is not complete because Amalek's still around, obviously what? To go ahead and anoint the king is first. Vein kisei lemelech. Shnemar v'yeshev Shlomo al kisei Hashem lemelech. V'dayin ani omer im lidmos lehem beis habechira tchila or lachrizar shalom tchila. Okay, you prove that melech comes before Amalek. How do you know that Amalek comes after the beis habechira? Maybe there's a mitzvah to go ahead and build a beis hamikdash before Amalek. You'll be lived over, right? First, you'll be left all your enemies, including the destruction of Amalek. Then you go ahead and you'll build a beis hamikdash. Okay, it says by David, and because he wants to build the Beis Hamikdash, and Hashem stops him. So you see that what? That the Beis Hamikdash David wanted to build after he destroyed what? His enemies. Reish Lakish, Betchila Melech Shlomo al Yoinim. Initially, Shlomo was the Melech on al Yoinim, on the Malachim or demons. Shnemar v'yeshev Shlomo al kisei Hashem. U'b'soif Melech al Tachtoinim, and then he became lower. He was only the Melech of the Tachtoinim. Kihu roida b'chol eva hanar mi tifsach v'ad Aza. Rabbi Shmuel Chadoma tifsach b'soif olam v'yaza b'soif olam, that he ruled over the whole world. V'chadoma tifsach v'yaza v'adadi havi yasvi. They were together. However, Kshem Shemalach al tifsach v'yaza, just like he was able to rule over these two cities that were next to each other. Kach malach hakol olam kulay. At the end, he was only Malach on Yisrael. Shnemar, Ani Koheles Yisi Malach al Yisrael. Ulbesoif, you have to Ashmedai, fellas. The Mashlim Gittin, if the Ashmedai took him and kidnapped him and threw him to the other side of the world, like Malach el al Yerushalayim. Shnemar, Divrei Kelis Ben David Melech Yerushalayim, Ulbesoif le Malach el al Mitasai, that's on his bed. Shnemar, Hini Mitasai Shlomo, Ulbesoif le Malach el Makle, a stick. This again, this is all because Ashmedai Shnemar, Zehoy Chelki Mikol Amali. Rabbi Shmuel Chanam Makle, V'Chanam Gondai is his talis. Hadar or Eloi Hadar, did he come back to his prestigious position? Rabbi Shmuel Chadam Hadar, he came back to his full glory. Chadam Eloi Hadar, he didn't come back, right? He didn't come back, meaning he didn't come back to his full glory, but he did come back as Melech. In other words, he was Melech, but not to the extent he was before Ashmedai took him. Mandi Eloi Hadar, Melech v'Hedyet, he's considered Melech and then a Hedyet because he's put down by Ashmedai. Mandi Hadar Melech v'Hedyet Melech. Therefore, he was a Melech, he came back being a Melech. Okay, so what is this is the lashon of the Rambam. This is the lashon of the Rambam in Shoftim, Halacha Hilchos Malachim, Perek Aleph, Halacha Beis. Minui HaMelech koydel Milchemes HaMalek. The appointing of a king comes before the what? It comes before the warring against Amalek. Shnemar, Oisi Sholach Hashem Lim Shachach LaMelech. It's interesting that the Rambam does not bring the same pasuk as we do, as the Gemara. This is not the pasuk we brought in the Gemara. V'atal leich v'kisas Amalek v'chrata zera Amalek koydem lebinyan beis hamikdash v'hi kiyesh v'melech beisai v'Hashem yinich l'misaviv mikolavav v'yom ha'melech al nasan ha'navi v'yanochi yosher beis harazim v'achasha kamas ha'melech mitzvah. Now here's the guys. The Yad Chazaka is a halacha sefer. It's a halacha sefer. In the middle of halacha punkt, freg the Rambam Akasha. Me'acha, after sheha kamas hamelech mitzvah, if going ahead and appointing a king is a mitzvah, right? Shesholu melech mishmuel. When they ask for a melech mishmuel, if he shesholu, why would they lama leiratza kadosh baruch hu kishesholu melech mishmuel? Why didn't a kadosh baruch hu want? And he asked a melech mishmuel. If it's a mitzvah, why? Says the Rambam's answer. Lefi shesholu b'tarumos. They asked b'tarumos. They only asked them, they didn't do it for the purpose of the mitzvah. They had it. So the fact, we don't mitzvah, do you have to mechavim for the mitzvah? We pass mitzvah tzrichas kavana. But over here it's more than that. What they wanted to do, according to the Rambam, is they don't want to kind the mitzvah. They just had it with Shmuel. They wanted to get rid of Shmuel. They had it with Shmuel. They had it with their lives. They wanted to change. Nothing to do with the mitzvah. And therefore, what did Hashem say? They're not rejecting you, Shmuel. Don't take it to heart. They're rejecting me. Because really, fellas, the appointing of a king would seem to be an exact steer to Judaism. HaMelech HaMishpat, HaMelech HaKadosh. We only have one Melech. Melech Malchei HaMelech HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The whole idea is bizarre. It's bazookas. It doesn't make any sense. Hashem allows a mitzvah of a melech, there must be a reason. If you are not going to go ahead and do it for the right reason, why does it blibe? It blibes you rebelling against Hashem. In other words, Hashem is, for a reason we're going to see in a second, Hashem decided it's a good thing to have a king. If you're not going to do it for the reason, what do you end up with? You're contradicting the whole idea of Judaism. Where Kadosh Baruch Hu is Melech Malchei HaMelachim. So if you did it b'tarumos and not to do the mitzvah, therefore Hashem was upset. That's not what I had in mind. That's the Rambam. That's the Rambam. Okay. There's a pshat, however, I think this is it's unbelievable. It's very meduyik, and it's geschmack as anything. Okay. I'm going to get rid of the Rambam. Okay. Do you have in front of you anything now, guys? You see a lot of words, Jewish words?
Yes.
Okay, good. This is the Kli Yakar, fellas. It's the Kli Yakar, okay? The Kli Yakar writes, Sayin Tassim Alach HaMelech, Rabim Oimrim, Min Yerenu Toiv Bir Maspik Ala Safik HaGadol HaNoif Al Mitzvah Zu. Who can explain the suffix about this mitzvah? Shem Hoyi Ratzon Hashem Shel Tzadik Yimlech Melech Kishi Yachbitzu Heim. The idea is that they should give a king when they want. Im Kain Lomin Sroyim Aleim Shmuel Anavi. The same kasha, this famous question. Why were they upset? It was something that was abominated, a very strong lashon in the eyes of Hashem. V'yeshayim, there are those who say, she'atarumas haya al, there was a tarumas al sh'am sh'leftenu k'chol hagoyim she'yishbarei sam b'nimusei hagoyim. So the Kliyaka quotes people who say that the complaint against them was they wanted to cling to judge them like the goyim judge. Go with the laws of the goyim, the idea of a king, of a goyish king. V'yeshayim she'ein parshazu mitzvah. There are those who say this parsha is not a mitzvah. Obviously not the Rambam. Obviously it's not a Gemara, right? There are those who say it's not a mitzvah. Elohai das devarim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling us the future. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu magid meireshis achris shekach yivakshu Yisrael la'asid v'hita lehem Hashem. In other words, it's going to happen with the lashon. It's going to be when you come into the land, and v'amata you're going to say asim alay melech kol hagayim. It's not a mitzvah. Hashem is foreshadowing, telling you what's going to be. V'hita lehem Hashem, and Hashem mated them what's going to be. Umi Rabbi Yitzchak Abarbanel herich b'kuach zeh. And the Abarbanel, he goes ahead into great lengths to discuss this vikuach. So that's the kasha. V'oimrani daitik b'ktsara, says the Heilige Yakar of Yaakov Kuli. Sharatzon Elokai haya shel tzadik yimlech melech aleihem k'dei lahatul moira al kulam. The purpose is for a king, you know why? Is to go ahead and place fear on the people. Kimosha Amru Rabbaseinu Zal, Havi Mispalul B'Shleima Shel Malchus Shel Moli Moira. V'loylet Tzorech HaMishpatim. We don't need the king for judgment. Sheyahayu Batei Dinim Kavuyim B'Cholir. We said a king can't judge anyway. Ain't done v'lei done, I say. You don't need the king for judgment. You have Batei Dinim, and through every city you have Batei Dinim. We just did the Gemara. The purpose of the king is to centralize the land. That the aim of the malchus will be upon them. That's what Hashem wants. Yeshua, we had this also. Take a stick and hit him on the head. Says the Kliyaka fellas, the purpose of a king is to go ahead and create ema, fear. And you know what then? If you have fear for Melech, Basav Adam, Alachas Kama V'Kama, you'll have fear for what? Melech Malchei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That explains the idea of the mitzvah of the king. It's to lead to a much better reason. It's not for the king himself. It's the fear of Basav Adam. The ema will understand what a Melech has. And then you have fear of Shemayim. Guys, I met President Trump. I got to tell you, with all the joking and everything, and it was a manuval and mukashchin and everything and all that. Bottom line is, you felt something. I felt if I did one thing wrong, I'd be dead in a second. Dead. I'd be the Secret Service. They told you exactly what to do. Do not make any quick move. Don't do anything beyond script. Shake his hand, and that's it. Shake his hand. And I was amazed. Every moment was controlled. If we would have that idea about a Kodesh Baruch Hu, that'd be unbelievable. That's the idea of Malchus. Now, how does it answer the kasha? Let's see. How does it answer the kasha? Let's see. L'kach nemar, therefore it says, Ki savay ala aretz, when you come into the land, right? Ki la'acha Yerusha, v'yeshiva, yishmon yeshur v'yivat. You know what? After Bnei Yisrael gets settled on the land, everything is going to be as like a geschmack. They're going to be sitting and fressing and eating and farming and raising cattle and livestock, and they're going to sit there and Yishman Yeshurin v'Yivat Yeshurin Klal Yisrael, and they're going to rebel. V'isha Yoshemin of Yasser, like it says in Shoftim. People are going to do what they want to do if there's no central authority. Kishein Melech b'Yisrael. That's what's going to happen. That Yishman Yeshurin v'Yivat. V'isha Yoshemin of Yasser. We had the Maisa of Pelegish Begiva. We had the Maisa of Pesel Micha. Why? Because there was no Melech. V'yazvada yoimru asridim asher Hashem kaira ki eis laseis l'shoel melech v'yamarta asim alai melech. Give us a king. Sheyim mayra alai. We got it. Anarchy is taking place. We need a leader. That's what it's for, to create ema. Ki kei mashma loshen alai. Soim tasim alai. On me. Sheyiyo elyoin alai. He's on top of me, and therefore he can go ahead and he can be Moshel and rule over me. Viroida, with a stick. That's what a king can do. To do like the correctness of them. They don't rebel against their kings. And they accept authority. And now the times will show. Right? At the time you lived in, you see that the oppression was taking place by the Tsar, by Poland. They had kings, and those kings had power in the Middle Ages. Nemar soim tosim alecha. What does alecha mean? Melech kishelezu kehoigin. That's the right way to ask. Kesheyu alecha melech. The hainu imasa alecha. The key word being alecha. Kemuvan memela alecha. Aval, but aval bimei Shmuel leidibru nechayna. They didn't speak correctly. Ki amru tina lanu. Don't tina alecha. Tila alanu, but tina lanu. Give for us melech. Le'amru aleinu melech ela lanu. Ki loy ratzu lekabel maris. They didn't want to get someone that had authority figure. Sheyu moira aleinu. Eliyah lanu meiser biadenu. He'll be given over to us. Lahakim malkin lahadim malkin. He'll do whatever we want. V'yoytz lanu mizeh shebal karcha yachnif lanu. He will go ahead and have to go ahead and flatter us. He'll be a politician. Right? The ikar chanufa is what? In the laws. Says the Kliyaka, you'd get a rabbi for a certain period of time. If he's only there for a certain period of time, you don't have to fear him. The other rabbi, the rabbi is scared because his contract is going to be over. Therefore, you have to go ahead and be mechanef them in order that they shouldn't lose. They shouldn't go ahead and lose their position. Says the Kliyaka, beautiful, beautiful Yisrael, guys. He says the problem wasn't asking for a king. The king they asked for was not the king of Klal Yisrael. Soim tasim alecha melech. The purpose of a king is alecha. The purpose of the king is to be over you. The purpose of the king is to accept maris, to go ahead and put you in your place, and then you'll know your place vis-a-vis HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But if this king is a lanu, if this king is somebody that will do your will or what you want, that's not what he wanted. You said to know lanu. You didn't say aleinu. You said for us to do our willing. Guys, who was the first Melech HaKlal Yisrael? Shaul. First Melech HaKlal Yisrael. Shaul comes. He was told to kill Amalek, right? Though he says what? Well, maybe you shouldn't. He talks him out of it, and he tells Shmuel, I was scared of the people. He's supposed to wait for Shmuel to come to bring the carbon. He doesn't wait. He was scared. I was scared of the people. The Kli Yakar says Shaul exhibits exactly what the wrong melech is. That's what you asked for. What Hashem gave you, what you asked for. You wanted a lanu, and you got it. You got Shaul. Shaul was mamash a lanu, guys. He was a person who was affected by the people. He was affected. He was scared of the people. He was scared of Doig. He wanted to please the people. He was a people pleaser. He wasn't a king. He was not a king. David, the first thing David says in Shmuel Beis, it says David came back from hitting Amalek. Right? David was a stark guy. I always said, if you had to choose between a person, Shaul and David, Shaul was the nicest person in the world. He'd be your best friend. You want to choose for a king better than David HaMelech. David was stark. David was, he knew what was lying. That, I think, is the mistake of shot, guys. That was wrong. Hashem, some tasim alecha. The purpose of a king is to be alecha. Then you'll come to Yiras Hashem. But to know lanu melech, for lanu, then you know what? It remains exactly what Hashem doesn't want. Another king, and Chanif, that's not king at all. That's not what the Baruch Shalom wanted. Okay.
The Rambam, they both, the common denominator is that each one, the Rambam and the Kli Yakar, they both say that Klal Yisrael asked for a melech for the wrong reason. According to the Rambam, the reason was they just were fed up with Shmuel. According to the Kli Yakar,
they both didn't want, right. They both didn't want the right king, but for different reasons. Correct. Okay. Akut Tanach. Thanks everyone for listening.